This is Alexandra from Presed.
And this is Paul from the Time Repair Corporation.
And we both welcome you to our monthly interchange.
A meeting of the minds, people reaching outside of themselves to attempt a deeper understanding of perspectives.
And it is through this coming together of perspectives that we hope to serve the divergent, the polymaths, the changemakers, the angels of chaos. Well, in short, the non-conforming thinkers and those who cannot fit into molds.
We want to achieve that by inviting those troublemakers from around the world and digging into their experiences and their unique views.
And these views, we are bringing them forth and supporting them with models. Models for education, models for sustainability, models for change, because we want to design a system. We want to help design a system that is fit for the future. But it's also a lot more than that.
We would really like to grow that conversation so that more people can weigh in and contribute to the practical creation of tomorrow. So reach out to us and let's make this, as much as possible, a borderless interchange.
And today's guest is a champion of interdisciplinarity and change. Well, obviously, that is kind of what we do at Interchange and why we have guest speakers at Interchange. He is the winner of the Digital Champions Award in 2019. He won the third place of the CIO of the Year Award in the same year, and the second place of the Digital Leader Award the year before that. And who knows what kind of nomination or awards he might receive in 2021. We'll see about that. And since he is far too modest to share any of those, that's why I took on the responsibility of sharing that with you today. His name is Bernd Preuschoff. He's from Germany, and he carries around 30 years of ballroom dance experience and 20 years of digital transformation experience. You might think, okay, these are two different worlds, but guess what? He succeeded in bridging the gap, in building amazing, beautiful bridges between the world of ballroom dance on one hand and the world of digital transformation on the other hand. And after having been an associate partner at IBM, he is now working as Chief Digital Officer and Chief Executive Officer at UVEX Group. Please welcome with me, Bernd Preuschoff. Bernd, how are you doing today?
Hello, Alexandra. Hello, Paul. Thanks for having me. I'm doing very, very well. And after this fabulous introduction, I couldn't feel any better. You made my day. Thanks for being with you.
Well, thanks for being with us today. Thank you for being part of this. I am sure that we're going to have a quite interesting conversation because it's not every day that you go on the streets and you ask around, hey, do you know how you can learn to be better at XYZ by being a dancer? So if you do that and you go on the streets and ask people this question, people will look at you, what are you saying? Are you serious? Are you okay? Are you sick or something? Where do you come from? Are you lost? And so it's interesting to have this type of conversation that is not very common, but that in the same time can shed so much light on these spaces between spaces and can connect the dots in very special and very, very unique ways.
Absolutely. And I get this question very often, how did it come, that these two parts of my life have been interlinked so heavily? And my thoughts on that, it all comes back to how we humans interact. And business is the same thing. If we go back many, many thousands of years, once we developed language, this is where we started to share stories. And these were the stories that, built communities. And of course, there's also moments where language is not enough anymore. And this is where your body and music come into play. And if you see in how many areas of our life, let it be religion, let it be a wedding, let it be a funeral, whenever we have the feeling that there's not enough words to express what's going on inside of ourselves, this is where people start to dance. And so I think looking at dancing can teach you a lot about how we humans were made to interact, where we see value in this interaction, how we achieve things together. And same thing we want to achieve when we do business. The point that I see that especially happened in the digital space over the last 5, 6, 7 years, it has been very much driven by inventing methods. And it has been very complex. If you're starting your digital career right now, you literally get flooded with books and speeches on methods that you need to learn to succeed. And yes, of course, these methods are important and we need them to tackle the innovation. But on the other hand, sometimes I get this feeling that we are losing people to the impression, as long as I learn enough methods, I will master this. And this is the point where I have the strong confidence that no, you won't. You need to tackle the invisible. You need to tackle this point where 1 + 1 becomes more than 2. You need to tackle this magic of getting into a flow with a team, your employees and your partners, in order to not just do a digital project or start a digital strategy, but rather create a movement. And I think this is where we can learn a lot from what dancers do on a daily basis. Like you said, I've been a competitive dancer and I'm working as a dancing coach for some decades. And I'm always amazed what people can achieve when they come together on a human basis and work together on a common goal to achieve the moment where they get into the floor and when people stand up and give them applause. And this is basically the same thing we want to achieve in the digital arena. So this is where I see the parallels.
And what brought the dancer, because you started dancer quite young, what brought the dancer to the world of business and to the world of digital transformation?
Basically, I have to say that it took me some time to see that both facets of my life have been there for a reason. In the beginning, when I was a young boy, you know, there's this legendary story in my family, because everybody asks me, how did you start to dance? And it all started with a funny moment when my mother, who was still alive back then, came to me when I was 14 years old, and she was an avid dancer, very much to the frustration of my father, because every time they went out, he came back really, you know, being really tired, and my mother smiling, you know, and she came to me and said, okay, my son, don't you think it's time for you to have dancing lessons? And I said this legendary sentence, me dancing, never. and then I ended up, you know, I'm coming from a little town where everybody is kind of attending the same things and going to the same places, and my class, my school class, actually went to the local dancing school, and so I said, okay, come on, my friends are going there, I'm joining them, and the rest is history. I never figured out until I was an adult man why dancing really, you know, tightly knit itself into my soul. When I started my professional career, my father was a businessman himself, and he would have loved to see me, you know, getting into his footsteps, which I wasn't convinced very much of in the beginning. So I started to study physics. and later realizing that it's probably not the thing that I want to do for the next 40 years. And then I started to get into his footsteps, and it was basically the right decision. And when I ended up, working as a consultant in the digital space, I suddenly realized that I was using methods of my sports career. And I realized, when you are entering a room with C-level people, it's very much the same as when you are standing in front of a couple who wants to win the next competition. You have to create and work. Each one of these persons has to work intensively on being excellent as a soloist. But once they are excellent soloists, this is where the work begins, to bring them together and create a team performance, which is much more than two soloists holding hands. And it's the same thing when you are working with a CEO, CFO, COO, same thing. And you have different roles, like you have in a couple. You have a leader and a follower in a couple, and same thing in a boardroom. And this is where I realized that I was interchanging methods between these two areas of my life. And so this is how a dancer became a digital strategist in the end, and a digital leader. And one step further, realizing why dancing made such an impact made me also learn about what matters to me as a digital leader. I already mentioned it. My mother died then very early in my life. And that was the point, when you are raised in a very traditional family with a rather old father, it's more about, taking responsibility, taking your duties, and taking care of everything that needs to be done. It's not so much about emotions. And I learned later that dancing literally saved my life by giving me the opportunity to express all my emotions in a safe place, and even the sad ones, even all the tragedy or the difficult situations that you have experienced in your life. The dancing floor is a place to let them all go out and show them. And the fun thing is, you even get applause for it if you have told that story in the right way. And I was thinking the same also in business. Sometimes we hide so much under that shield called professionalism, and we forget that we are all people with emotions. We all have a history. We all carry our cross from our past. And wouldn't we be a much more human society if we would meet as those and say, okay, this is me, this is my history, this is my emotions. And from the role and what I've practiced, this is what I can bring to the table as knowledge. And now let's see what we can do together as an amazing couple, as an amazing team, and create something that matters for us as the ones who are doing it, but also that matters for the ones watching us, and inviting them to maybe have that same experience. And by that, in the words of the dancer, create a movement. And so this is basically what made me the person I am today.
I was actually planning to ask you about precisely what you just talked about, the connection between that ballroom dance and your role as a transformation officer, as someone in business, how you brought something new. But I'm really fascinated by this idea of those two separate facets. Like each of us is a gemstone. Maybe we need some polishing, maybe we need a little cleaning up, but those different facets of our lives are looking in at the same core, the same soul, the same inner parts. And that if there's anything going on in those inner parts, as you were saying, emotions that aren't getting out because one facet is just not angled to let those out, the importance of being able to shine light through from one and see the effect from another. Would you be willing to expand any more on the emotional side of that? Because for me personally, that has been a specific struggle in my life. The separation between the face of duty and responsibility that comes on when you're in a professional role, and the inner turmoils that might be broiling, that might have been effectively cooking you in your own juices for years. Mm-hmm. Would you be willing to talk about that, that sort of jump to be able to express and release and be a complete person through this connection?
Thank you for sharing that, and I can feel you. I have been going through exactly the same. The point is, and I'm really sharing you the whole story of it. You know, when your mother dies when you're 15, you're taking over responsibilities, and nobody's asking you if you want that.
Yeah,
it has to be done. And if you are raised with a father who's already very sick from a heart and body perspective, you take care of him, and you're just doing it because it's necessary. What it has taught me is to manage situations, to take care of a family, and also, you know, resilience. You know, I'm the one who needs to be standing. I'm the one who needs to be standing, and it doesn't matter how hard the thunder gets. I'm not going down, because if I go down, my whole family will go down.
Yeah.
And this is what it has taught me. And I have really struggled when I started in my professional career, because the same thing happened to me again and again and again. I was the last one standing. You know, I was the one taking care of the family, and everybody was, you know, giving me some kind of rewards and recognition for that. But I still struggled in my inner self, you know. But you know what? I didn't want that to do. You know, I didn't want that. You know, I did it because it had to be done. And you know, dancing in the end of the day told me, because I had a different floor, and I realized on that floor, you know, I hate to confess it, but actually it is me. It's not just a role that was kind of pushed over my head. And I had a very wise man, you know, telling me, you know, our mothers made us the warriors we are. And this is what I feel today, you know, that the whole situation with my mother, and she was kind of the caretaker for my family, I have been taking over this role. And this is what I do on the dance floor when I work with my students. I'm taking care of them. I'm taking care of them making their career. And this is what I do in my day-to-day when I'm working as a CDO. I'm building families. I'm rebuilding families. And I'm trying to do this with the sound of music, with the sound of making it an experience. And this is where I feel accepted. This is where I feel this is the place I want to be. This is the floor. And yes, I want to amaze an audience, but not for the sense of ego, because I want to amaze the audience because later on we will have a party together and be a family. And this is where I found my way. And I agree with you. When I started my career, especially in consultancy, there were so many moments where I had this clear feeling I don't fit in here. This is totally different to everything that I'm feeling. But as a young consultant, you know, you're not in the position actually to maneuver your way around this. But I think that's also the reason why I ended up being in innovation, because innovation allows me to create the environment that I love to be in. And I can use the assets that we have and that I like and work around those that I don't like and make it a future where people want to be in and don't have to make concessions. Yeah, so this is how I see the world today. I can tell you it took me some years. It took me some very good conversations with great friends. But I'm happy to say today, you know, the one that didn't fit in for decades is now in the position to create the future for families. May it be my team members, may it be my colleagues, may it be my partners, may it be my friends. And looking at it from that perspective, to me, it all makes sense.
I think this is a wonderful intake on how the personal and the professional are not in a war together, and that there's one that feeds into the other, and that goes in both directions. So it's cyclical. It's not a one-way communication. The professional always has to communicate to the personal, or the personal always has to communicate to the professional. But when the two dance together in a way, this is where 1 + 1 equals much more than 2, much more than a personal life that is in parallel, in tandem with a professional life. They actually create a higher life. They actually create a more balanced, a more holistic, a more personally relevant and contextually relevant life. And I think that is absolutely wonderful. And when the emotional side is embedded in the process, what happens almost all the time is a process of transformation. And different people would react to a different stimulus in completely different ways. When it comes to the emotional side of things, a marvelous way of communication, which can be considered as not normal or not standard, is the act of transformation of pain into power, the act of transformation of the negative into positive, of the ugly into something that can be beautiful, of what can be weighing on you into something that can liberate you. And by doing that, that can also liberate other people. And I completely relate to it. I've had my own share of experiences that are similar to yours, and we've discussed that in another conversation as well. And by living it, by accepting it, by living it, and by living up to it, it is possible to create something that is on a much higher level, on a level that is much more complete and that encompasses the person in their entirety. And I think this is something that we all want to strive towards, because we realize with everything that is so hectic around us, and all the noise, all the environment, all the feedback that comes from the external world, there is increasingly more pressure on individuals, on professionals, on artists, on dancers, on consultants, and so on and so forth. And perhaps what I would like perhaps to discuss here is how can we as individuals, with all that amount of pressure that is coming towards us, really use that as a springboard to create something new, to create something different. How is that possible from a dance perspective? And how is that possible from a digital transformation perspective? And perhaps both are going in the same direction as well.
So what I think, we dancers, we make a difference, which I think is very important. And I think sometimes we are missing this in the discussion that you already mentioned, when people feel that they have pressure in their roles. As a dancer, you make a strong difference between taking a role and your interpretation. And this is, I think, where's your magical power. And of course, in a business, we have roles. In my today's role, I'm a manager. I have to be a manager. I have to do all this administrative stuff for my employees. I'm an executive. I'm discussing with our CEO on the business we are doing and its future. And these are roles that I need to take. It's the same thing coming back to dancing. I'm a Latin American dancer in competitive environment. You're doing 5 different dances. Okay, so I'm taking 5 different roles. But again, what is my interpretation of that role? And most people know there's a dance called Paso Doble, and the man is doing the bullfighter. And this is just a role, but the interpretation of that role can be so different. It can be aggressive, it can be elegant, it can be gypsy style. It can be so different. And if you put the lady to it, it can be romantic, it can be a fight, it can be aggressive, it can be erotic, you know, and it's a question of interpretation. And I think I would love people to spend less time on talking about personal branding, but rather on thinking about, I am in this role today, what is my interpretation of it? My very personal interpretation, and then live up to it. And live up to it and bring it on stage. This is how you interpret your role as a manager, as a consultant, as a CEO, and what is your personal flavor? And I remember one of my dancing teachers, she said that sentence, she was a world champion back then, and she said, whenever I watch a couple, I need to have a taste in my mouth. It can be salt, it can be sour, it can be hot, it can be sweet. I don't care. Maybe I don't like that taste because it's not my personal favor. But the worst thing that can happen is that I smell water. And I think that's the same thing when we talk about being leaders. What's your taste? What is your interpretation of what you're doing? And accept the fact that there are people out there who will probably not like the taste. But everybody knows it's you. And I love the approach of being authentic in it and finding your own way, which of course also means trying out things. You know, that's what you do as a dancer as well. I'm a very tall guy, and I also tried, you know, to be the fast and quick and whatever mover on the floor. And simply it doesn't work with my body, you know, but I tried to do it. And it didn't work out because the smaller people, the smaller guys, they always outpaced me. And but what I can do is I can show lines, I can show pictures because I've got a huge reach for my arms and I've got long legs. And well, that's probably my way to go. This is using my assets to make a difference. And yes, of course, there are people out there who say, well, you're too tall for your lady. Yes, we anyway won the competition. So, and as long as people remember what I've been doing, and next time I come back, they remember me and they remember the feeling that I gave them. This is where I start making a difference. When I stop tasting like water and adding my own flavor to it. And I think this is also the way to get beyond this sort of pressure. Yes, there will always be stressful situations. There will always be times of having a huge workload. There will always be a time of making difficult decisions. But what is your interpretation of that role in that very moment? And going the way where you say, well, that's me, and this is how I do this role. I think that could be an answer. And also in my role as a mentor and coach for startups and for young professionals, that's what I try to get out of them. Is what's your idea? What's your choreography? What's your taste that you want to give to an audience? And then have the courage to go out on the floor and show it and be you. And I think that's a much more satisfying, enriching, and appeasing way than desperately trying to be someone where your inner self tells you all the time you're not. And yeah, that would basically my answer to that one.
That's true. Alignment creates a huge difference. When you feel aligned with yourself, the energy level skyrockets. Your ability to manage stress becomes magical. Your resilience becomes much more flexible and elastic, because you know that whatever happens in the world around you, no matter how tough things can get, no matter how disastrous the situation is, you have within you the resources, the power, the energy, the ideas, the creativity, all the things, all the tools that you can use your own way to create something that has value, or in your words, that has a taste. And that completely changes the interaction that we have with the external world. It's just when we find that alignment between who we are and what we do. And it's I feel that it's absolutely magical, and I'm sure that you feel the same way as well.
Absolutely, and I've always wondered, being a dancer, you know, everybody admires that moment when the magic happens, but when you tell people, well, you can do the same, there's always this awkward feeling of, do you really think I can do this?
Yeah.
And this is where we as leaders come into play and tell people, yes, you can. And it's not magic. You know, when I'm on stage and I'm showing dancing, sometimes I just get a lady up on stage and I'm just moving hands with her. I'm not doing one single step. And then I ask the audience, what do you think? And audience usually goes, wow, it was magic. And so, did you realize that I didn't make a step? I was just trying to build a connection with this woman, and she was so nice to accept it. And then we had a connection, and this is what you watched, and this is what you thought was magic. And we do connections the whole day, you know, with the people around us. And just by taking care of these connections and doing them intensively and intentionally, you know, brings so much magic to our life. And also in a business life, you know, every moment that I do with an employee is a signature experience where he or she can experience me as his or her boss, you know, taking care of her, giving her the feeling that he or she matters, and using this opportunity, I think really makes a difference. And of course, you know, being someone who lost people very early in his life, sometimes we take people for granted that are around us. And this is why we don't put enough effort in creating the connections and valuing them. And, you know, I also told my kids, you know, not to worry you or to make you frightened, but I've learned what it means if there's no chance anymore to say I love you to somebody. And and I know how it feels to have these moments when you are in your room and you would give literally anything to have this one opportunity. And what it taught me is, whenever I meet someone and I have that feeling, say it. I like what you do. I like you. You amazed me. You gave me a wonderful feeling. Saying it now, and not just, you know, once a year in your bonification process interview, but every day. You made me smile today, and I think that simply creates an environment where people feel treasured and feel respected, and people are giving it back to you in the same way. And in my experience, in my professional past, this is what made amazing teams. And even if we are not working together anymore, when we meet, it's always like, wow, you remember these days when we did that? And I think that's I think that sounds to me like a good sense for life. Create memories, create experiences that people remember, and remember with a smile.
That's the power of intensity. And all of the great things that have been built, designed, written, drawn in the past, they come from a place of intensity. Because if we live on autopilot, we have no way, we have no mean to do something that is meaningful. We're just on autopilot. An autopilot is not a creator, is not a designer, is not a person who has, or is not a system that allows you to kind of express all the things that need to be expressed.
I have a hypothetical for you. Let's say that I am a constipated professional, a manager, and I realize that in order to move forward in business, I've got to make changes. It's necessary to adapt and to grow. What can I learn, and how can I best open myself to that change from specifically the arts, from ballroom dance, from music, from what have you?
I think the question that you're raising, there's similar ways to express that question, but I think it all comes back to one point. At least from what I've learned from the conversations with my students, it all comes back again and again to the question of courage. Do I have the courage to go my way? Do I have the courage to do what I feel for me would be the right thing? And I have to add, I'm a strong believer in the fact that if we go to a quiet place and we take some moments off, everybody of us knows what his or her inner voice says that would be the right thing. And we just very often tend to not listen to that voice, but rather listen to the voice that tells us what should be done, not to get a too harsh reaction from the outside. Sometimes we overvalue the outside over our inner side.
Why do you think that happens?
Sometimes I think it has to do with a feeling which I think is quite common these days. People think that they are victims of the world and victims of what happens in this world. And they have the feeling that things are much bigger than they can handle, and what they do wouldn't make a difference. And I'm always trying to say, you know what, if everybody thinks like that, nothing's gonna change. Of course, I personally, I can't make a change. I can't make a change for the complete world climate. But there's definitely something that I can do within my own influence, and this is where I think where it takes courage, and also in professional decisions, and what I think is important, Paul. I've always wondered, you know, when this whole digital thing started, everybody was using rhetorics of threat. That this whole digital thing is a threat. You know, this is digitize or die. Uber yourself before you get Kodak. You know, these whole phrases that have been throwing around back and forth. And I was always wondering, you know, why did I never feel this whole digital thing to be a threat? And I realized when I was writing my book, well, this is how we dancers look at the world. You know, if you're a dancer and you are working on a choreography and you reach that moment where you really master that choreography, maybe for a world championship or whatever, and imagine somebody would come up to that dancer and say, perfect, this choreography is perfect, and now you're doing this for the next 20 years of your life. this is where you actually kill that dancer. Because this is what the dancers want. Once we've mastered this, we want to do the next thing. There's a new piece of music. There's a new piece of dance. There's a new person that we have met. There's a new community we want to be part of. And this is the whole magic, you know, of exploring and exploring and exploring. And we want to find out if we can master it. And this is why we are not intimidated by this endless view. And also, a dancer is never finished. We know that when we start as a dancer, you're never done. And you like it. You're not threatened by it. This is the amazing thing about dancing. And I always try, coming back to business, this is what I try to tell my teams and also the people I'm working with, you know. This is the room of opportunity. Let's imagine what kind of choreographies we can build. This is the kind of experiences that we can create. And isn't this fun? You know, having the ability to try things out. Yes, and maybe we fail. Maybe we will figure out that this kind of movement, well, not my piece of cake, or this kind of dance. Well, to be honest, I love Argentine tango, but if you have ever been to a 3 hours milonga, where you hear 3 hours of Argentine tango, this is really, you are close to suicide after these 3 hours, you know? And that's it. That's something, you know, where I say, okay, I love Argentine tango, but not for 3 hours, you know? And you know, the same thing happens in business. We get into things, we give it a try, we try to master it with all what we've learned before. And eventually you say, well, I don't like it, but I've learned what could be the other dance that I like more. And then you get into it and then you realize, oh, wow, that's it. That's it. That's my kind of dance. And then you go into it. And I think, you know, looking at it from there, it doesn't need courage because it's not a threat. It's something that's fun. And this is where you say, well, this kind of awakens that kid inside yourself where you say, okay, I want to try out. Let's find this out. Put the music on and put the volume up, you know, and I think it's important that we also frame the future of innovation and frame the work for the people working on innovation in that way, not for the sake of enthusiasm and young people shooting with water guns in the Berlin startup collaboration center, but simply for the understanding, if we want to create serious innovation, we need to have fun with exploring and trying out. Otherwise, we are never exploring enough, at least for my understanding. As long as we see it as a threat and we ask questions like, do you think we can do this? Do you think we can manage this? This is not the advice that enables you to jump far. You will always have this tight-knit rope with your past, and you will always tend to underestimate yourself. And I think it's not about the threat, it's exploring about what is possible. And I see this when I work with kids, you know, asking kids the question, do you think you can make it? Every kid will be in. I said, I'll show you. I try. I want to find out. And this is where I say, you know, being an adult with 48 years, sometimes it helps to be more like a kid and think, okay, I'll find out. And as adults, sometimes we think we have so much to lose, you know, but having so much to lose actually means standing still. And being a dancer, this is what I want to do till the end of my life, till I go down to the grave. I want to explore things. I want to hear music. I want to hear new songs. And I think that's the way to go beyond the question that you raised. When you have these moments in your life, you know, what is the music that you would choose for your next dance? And if you have a clear feeling, just put it on.
I think this is absolutely important, especially what you said on remaining or keeping or preserving or protecting the kid in you, even when you become an adult. The current educational system really pushes you to answer questions the right way and to follow guidelines as they were presented to you. And that sort of creates a tendency to want to always have the right answer from the first time, which does not really reflect what happens in the real world, especially when we're in the process of innovating, creating, and coming up with new, fresh ideas. There's a process of exploration that is really anchored in the power of failure, in the power of errors, in the power of making mistakes, and in the power, therefore, of iteration until you reach a good outcome and a good conclusion. And I think the fact that we have been through the educational system for such a long period of time, we end up being afraid of failing, being afraid of having the wrong answer, being afraid of making the wrong step. And dancing sort of frees us from this, because of course we are going to make the wrong step. Of course we're going to make the step the wrong way, and we're going to repeat not one mistake, but several mistakes, several times until we finally reach a point where we understand how things work and how we can perform them. And once we have that understanding, this is where we can start to innovate with the step that we have in dancing. You have something to say, I can feel it.
Yeah, I think, and I want to add on what you said, and I think one of the mistakes that I see very often when people say, you know, as adults, we have to think more like kids or remember how we were thinking as kids. Some people have the misperception that this means just playing around. And no, it isn't. As a dancer, the one thing as a Latin dancer, what you practice hundreds and thousands and millions of times is a Latin step forward. And you're doing this, and this is really, really hard work. And of course, for what we do in innovation, we need to understand the methods. We need to practice certain things that are essential to build our choreography upon. And that's also, you know, I don't think it's also not right if you really have young kids, just let them play around. They need to understand that there are things in life when you want to achieve something, you need to practice hard. And there's no way around that sweat, blood, and tears if you want to achieve that goal. And telling them something else is actually lying at them, because this is not how the world works. You know, bringing these two things together, having the experience of many years of work, being a professional, having seen different floors, different dances, having been practicing over many years, having been throwing down in competitions, raising up in competitions, and using this as assets to create a new chapter for my next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I think this kind of thinking also helps, especially companies, to say, okay, what's in our past that we can use? What have we learned? What have we mastered? And now, as we are here with all the new opportunities, the new music, the new sound, the new floors, what can we create from there? And I think this would be a much more inviting way of telling people about digital times and digital innovation than the disrupting, threatening, you need to kill the old speech that we see very often in the marketplace.
So can we expect a sequel for your book titled From Ballroom to Boardroom?
Actually, as this book is quite new, I haven't spent much time thinking about the sequel. And
now you can.
And now you can, and for some reason I get very much requests for a sequel. Yeah, but you know, I'm happy with the situation as it is. Let's face it, when I came up with the idea of writing a book, everybody expected me to write a book about digital. And even when I was talking to the publishers later on, I really had one guy telling me, come on, if you had written a book about digital project management, we would have immediately published it. And I asked him, but you know, there's thousands, literally thousands of books on that topic out there. Why should I write another book on that topic? And he was like, yes, but it's a safe bet. And I was like, okay, now I learned that you're not the right publisher for me. Of course, I knew I'm working a lot together with technology people, and you know, there's this image of tech people being nerdy, and I didn't know, to be honest, how all the digital bubble would react on me writing a book about dancing. But I thought to myself, well, unfortunately, that's my life. This is what's happened in my life. I don't have a different life. And this is how all these things came into play. And I'm sorry, I'm not a soccer player. I'm not a volleyball player. I'm not a golfer. So I'm a dancer. And this is why I wrote this book. And I was amazed when I published it in Germany, how many tech people opened up themselves about being a dancer or being a musician. And also then the other guys came up who are athletes in different disciplines. And I'm really happy that it opened up at least in certain areas, the discussion about, well, that's me. And I love the conversations that I had, like yours with you, Alexandra, because they all started with, well, that's me. And so much, so very often in my professional past, I met people where the conversation started with, this is how I want to look like. Mm. And so now we are talking on a different level. We are not trying, nobody is trying to give me his fake picture or his title or whatever. The people starting the conversation about the book is, this is me. I've experienced the same. I'm doing this. I'm a musician. I tell you a secret, the guy who is doing the next award, he approached me, and he turned out to be a thrash metal drum player. Nice. And this was so funny because we were talking about being a thrash metal drum player and the interactions that he knows and the interactions that I knew from dancing. And if we would have met, 5 years ago, a CDO would have met an agency CNO talking about the award. I think it's easy to see which discussion and which conversation was much more rewarding, much more inspiring, much more connecting and bonding between the two of us. And if I can add a bit, just a little bit, to this different way of people meeting people, then it was all worth it. And of course, it's a present for my kids. And one day when I'm already gone, they will have a book with pictures of their father talking about digital and dancing. And well, that was me.
No, that is amazing. Bernd, I have a question that is related to the structure of the company itself, because we talked about how being kind of a manager who's uptight and how he or she can better kind of coordinate things. But there's also another level, another layer when it comes to businesses and when it comes to digital transformation, which is the movement part, the movement part of things, the cultural dynamics, how things work together. And I do remember that you have some really interesting ideas in terms of how we can connect music, rhythm, and beat, melody, rhythm, and beat to the cultural dynamics within the organization. Can you shed a bit of light in that area?
Yeah, I mean, the point is, I get this question very often. Okay, as a dancer, you're using music. How do you relate this to organization? And as a dancer, you make exactly the differentiation that you were already mentioning. As a dancer, I have a beat, and the beat tells me how fast the music is. The rhythm tells me the kind of music it is. So it tells me what kind of dance it probably is. And I have the lyrics, and they tell me the story. And if you get into a company and you use the same pattern, and I unconsciously used it in my past, we all agree that every company has its own speed. It has its kind of its own rhythm, and you can see the lyrics, what people talk. And the advice that I give to business people is the same that I always gave to my students. You know, when people start to dance, they are very proud when they realize that they are getting ready to detect the right dance. And they're on the floor, the music is playing, and they understand, well, this is a waltz and this is a slow waltz. And what they do is, once they've detected it, they right away start dancing. It's kind of like putting a CD into a CD player. No, and I think I've recognized it now I run. And we also see this in competitive dancing, that people are literally running across the floor because they've understood it's cha-cha-cha, and now they're doing the cha-cha-cha sequence. And you can observe the same thing in business, especially if people are hired as a CDO or hired as a consultant. They go in, they think they understand the company because they had one or two conversations, and from there they're simply running down their choreography because they think this is what happens. And I always told my students, you know, take these few seconds to listen closely. Think about the speed, think about the rhythm, think about the lyrics, and then try to adapt your choreography and your means to that music. And then once you've mastered this, start to interpret into a new way. And I think that's the way that I've learned works the best if you're starting as a CDO. I anyway think it's one of the most underrated capabilities is listening, listening closely without talking, without pushing your message, just listening and feeling yourself into that organization and understand what kind of music is playing here. And then starting to dance and then taking over the lead and slightly moving it and into a different kind of dance with a different speed and a different rhythm, and also with different lyrics time after time. And I think this is much less confrontative, much less threatening compared to the other way where you just impose the new and insult the old. And rather, you know, inviting people to join the dance floor with you, and then create a new choreography together with all the ones who have been there. Also respecting what they've done before and treasuring the roots of the dance. This is what we do as well as dancers. Even if we do a new interpretation, we always treasure the roots of the dance. And same thing in business. And I personally like this interpretation very much, and I can also say it proves to be very efficient in reality.
So what would you say that dance sport could teach us about our interpersonal skills, about really collaborating with one of those teams? Once you've taken the time to listen and really ideally understand the music that's going on, what will that allow us to do with collaboration and with communication?
Well, I would, if you allow me to, I would phrase your question a bit in a bit larger context. And because I get a similar question very often, you know, what dancing can teach kids.
Mm.
And I think this explains a lot. And I always give, you know, like kind of 6 points that really matter to me and which I've seen with kids. So first of all, dancing teaches kids discipline. The discipline to work on your goals and the discipline to repeat things day by day until you can't get them wrong anymore. I think that's very important. Dances teaches kids to show your personality, to express your personality, find out who you are, by trying out different things and trying to take another code of another role and see if it fits you, but at the end of the day, coming out as the one you are. Dancing definitely teaches you humbleness. Humbleness in a sense of a step that you don't master right away, or a competition where you don't come out as first, and by learning from that and repeating again and trying again and trying again, and also accepting that from time to time other people are better than you, and then looking at them and learn and try to do the same. I also think dancing makes you a really great partner because you are working with someone on a very intimate level. You can feel what your partner is feeling. You can feel when your partner is struggling. You can feel when your partner is succeeding, and he feels the same. And actually learning to read that, learning to feel that, and learning to work with that and use it to work for a common goal, I think is a wonderful skill. And not only for the sake of the two of you being successful, but also learn how to move people. Dancing is about amazing an audience. Dancing is about creating feelings in others and not just inside yourself. And putting these 6 things together, I think it answers your question. If we collaborate and communicate with people who have learned these 6 things very early in their life, wouldn't that be amazing? And I think that's also basically what I give to leaders. Show the discipline, show who you are, be humble, accept when you fail because you can learn from it, work for a goal, be a perfect partner, and try to move people. I think these 6 points are also valid for any leader, especially in the space of innovation.
I think these are 6 pieces of advice that can really benefit every single person. So be it leaders, managers, young people starting their career, because they also need to embrace all of these. Students at university, people who are doing collaborative work, working on projects together, startups and entrepreneurs who are going to create their own choreography in the heart of all that innovation process. So I think these 6 ideas are deeply anchored in dance, and they should be deeply anchored in our own personal experiences. We have a special part in the Interchange podcast that is called the Rapid 7.
Mhm.
And the Rapid 7 is about asking 7 questions super fast, super quickly. And you will have to answer them super fast, super quickly.
Okay. I'm excited. I hope I can manage it.
Okay,
Just let me put my dance shoes on before.
You don't need dance shoes for that. You're just flying around.
Okay, let's go.
So Bernd, Latin or standard?
Latin.
Eine kleine Nachtmusik or 99 Luftballons?
Mozart has been one of the first innovation guys in music.
Right?
Describe dance sport in 1 word.
Passion.
Describe digital transformation in 1 word.
Passion.
I can see a pattern here. Describe the nexus between dance sport and digital transformation in 1 word.
Leadership.
Passion and passion mix. Nice. Best breakfast food.
Coffee.
Agreed. An inspirational message or an advice, but in no more than 5 words.
It's 6 words. Be the truest rebel you are.
I love it. 6 words or 7 words or 5 words. I love
Right.
it. Yes, yes, yes for that. Yes for that. Bernd, anything else that you want to share?
Oh, well, first of all, I have to thank you. It has been an amazing conversation. And imagining that we are physically sitting on totally different areas of the world and having this wonderful conversation about digital innovation and dancing, it's just, I'm blessed, and I have to thank you for your time and also for having me as a guest and giving me the opportunity to share my view on the world just as a proposal. And so the only thing I would like to share is, sometimes the treasure lies in the unexpected. And whenever you have a weird feeling looking at something, whenever you say, well, I don't know what that means, is that really important to me? Does it really matter? I've made the experience that these are the moments where you should actually look closer. Because in order to do new things, you have to look at those things that feel weird to you. And yeah, that would be probably the advice. So whenever you come across a dancer, even if you haven't been dancing before, join him or her. Dancers are nice people. Dancers are always willing to show you the next dance. And I love the picture of the 3 of us one day after the pandemic situation, meet in person and have a dance session mixed between Lebanon, Finland, and Germany. And let's switch music. That'll be fun.
I agree.
Fantastic.
I agree. Paul, are you in?
I'm in. This has got to happen.
It has to.
So we're planning for an actual real world dance session once the crazy phase we're in wears out and we can create, I don't want to say new normal because I hate it. We want to create a new exceptional.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Make something to remember.
Exactly.
Agreed. Bernd, I personally want to thank you so much for your time, for your insights, for your innovative ideas, and for bridging a gap and inhabiting the space between the spaces, because this is where we can actually create an exceptional future. And it is through these explorations that we can finally design something that looks much more like us, instead of us wanting to look like the systems and the molds and the structures that are available to us because they've been in place for the past hundreds and thousands of years. So I thank you so very much. Paul, do you have any last words to share with our dear audiences?
Just that I've been incredibly privileged to be here for today's talk. I'll say it, the wisdom that has been shared today, I hope can benefit others just as much as I feel that it has benefited me personally. This has been a fantastic talk. And I look forward to more conversations outside of Interchange and more conversations inside of Interchange. But for now, on behalf of the Time Repair Corporation, I want to thank you all for listening and for being a part of the Interchange. Reach out to us if something about the talk today really touched you. Then let us know. Get a message out, because I'm sure Bernd would love to hear about it as well. And that way we can all sort of join a greater conversation. Thank you very much.
That was Interchange. Thank you, Bernd. Paul, it's always a pleasure co-hosting this with you. And for you, everyone out there listening to us, enjoy the rest of the day, night, evening. Dance around, dance your heart out, and make sure to transfer all the energy that you have within you and move across your life with all the power and all the beautiful things that you have to share.